through your holy word. Pray that you would, by your Holy Spirit, continue to lead us into all truth and give us joy in the mercies that you show to we who are your people. Bless all those who need your healing hand, guide and strengthen them, and according to your will, restore them and give them strength for their days. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So we are in 2 Kings chapter 6. We just had the sort of wrapping up of the account of Naaman and Elisha and Gehazi. And Gehazi ended up being given the leprosy that Naaman had been relieved of, because Gehazi was greedy and prideful and tried to take for himself what God had not given him to receive. Elisha had said, no, we're not going to take anything, and Gehazi went and lied about it and gathered it, and so now he became a leper like snow. So he's going to have Elisha's going to be without a right-hand man for now. In chapter 6, the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, "See, the place where we dwell under your charge is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, and each of us there get a log, and let us make a place for us to dwell there." So the sons of the prophets is sort of that theological school, if you will, those who were studying under the guidance of Elisha and studying his word, and God uses them in prophetic ways. And it seems like they have a good following. They don't have enough space. We need more places to dwell, and we need more room, so let's go down to the Jordan and get some logs and build it there. And he said, "Go." And then one of them said, "Be pleased to go with your servants." And he answered, "I will go." So hey, come with us. Okay. So he went with them, and they went and came to the Jordan, and they cut down trees. But as one was felling a log, his axe head fell into the water. And he cried out, "Alas, my master, it was borrowed." He's lost the axe head. It was borrowed. And the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. He said, "Take it up." So he reached out his hand and took it. So sort of a miraculous recovery of this borrowed item, this iron head, which we know, throwing a stick into the water by a piece of iron isn't going to draw it up out of the water. So obviously this is a miraculous thing that God granted here. And it's showing there are sort of great spiritual cares that God does for his people, and sometimes there's great everyday cares that God does for his people as well, because I don't know that we necessarily have all that much deep theological assessment to put into this. The axe is at the root of the trees already, and so these prophets are. No, I wouldn't go allegorizing it quite like that or things. But if you borrowed something and you broke it or lost it, or you had an animal that you borrowed and it was injured while you were making use of it, you would have to give restitution. You would have to replace it. And at this time, iron is still a pretty difficult to come by and handle material. And so it was borrowed, and he seemed very distressed about the fact that he had lost it. I mean, we lose that axe head today, and it's sort of like, we might try to get it back, but at the same time, it's like, well, just $20 over it, $40 down at Home Depot, we get another axe head. It's not the end of the
Depends
world.
who the owner was.
Depends on who the owner was, yeah. That's a good point. If it's your father-in-law's axe head, you're probably a little more concerned than...
Oh, yeah.
Axe that he had from his great-grandfather.
Right, yeah. So the Lord restored it to him, and so they didn't have to worry about that then. So it probably would have been an expensive thing to have tried to deal with, but the Lord restored it to him.
The story sounds as if this was an everyday occurrence. Like, oh yeah, now threw a stick in and floated. I mean, there's no How did he do that?
And they were amazed and in awe at the wisdom of Elisha, and they followed it, and his following increased day by day, right? Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. Elisha doing like, you know, Elisha, he's got something for everything. You know, a little flower pot, and we're not going to get poisoned. Little stick on the water makes the iron float. Works for me.
We'll stick with them.
Yeah, right. All right. This next section, we're going to see, so we take sort of, I don't want to say a mundane miracle there, but something, not earth-shattering. And we're going to move to something miraculous that God does for his people to rescue them, to deliver their lives, to deliver their very lives and give them victories in unexpected ways. We're about to see through Elisha, God doing things using the unexpected. We've already seen the outcastness of lepers, and we're about to see some lepers be used to bring good news to the people. We see God using what is not seen except by faith to deliver them from an enemy. We're going to see God, through Elisha, treat their enemies in unexpected ways as well. So let's see what we have here. So verse 8. Once when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servants, saying, at such and such a place shall be my camp. But the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are going down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God told him, and thus he used to warn him, so that he saved himself there more than once or twice. So Elisha, in his prophetic role, is being given wisdom from God about the enemy's movements, and then Elisha is giving that information to the king to avoid defeats. The mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king. And I was like, none of us are a spy. Although I wonder, I don't know how long after this was the Naaman episode, but who was Naaman? He was he was in charge of the army of the king of Syria, right? And so now he's healed and he's back worshiping Yahweh, and he's got the dirt to worship on and all these things. And now all of a sudden they're getting inside information on the military movements of the Syrians. So we're not given that information. I mean, it's not told it's Naaman, but at the same time, it would not have, he must not be around, because if he were around, he would be the obvious suspect, and they don't even mention him. So maybe he's in retirement now. His flesh has become like that of a little child, and he says, "I'm out. I'm gonna retire and things." But if Naaman had been around, he would be public enemy number one. It's like, who could be for Yahweh? Who's the guy who's always worshiping Yahweh? And Naaman's just sort of like there, like, what? Me? He's got the wide brimmed hat and the curly. He's like, oi, what? And they say, none, my lord, O king. But Elisha, who is prophet in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. It's like, he knows your most intimate secrets. I don't know how they know that exactly, but nevertheless. Their spies in Israel are coming back and saying, Elisha knows everything. And he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and seize him. And it was told him, behold, he is in Dothan. Yeah. There's going to be a couple of these places coming up that are important. But so he's in Dothan. And he sent there horses and chariots and a great army, and he came by night and surrounded the city of Dothan. When the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning, he's got a new servant, it's not Gehazi anymore. Behold, an army with horses and chariots was all around the city. He said, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" And he said, "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." He's like, can you imagine the servant being like, talking about? It's just, you got this city of Dothan, which, you're talking in the maybe thousands of people at the most. These are villages that, to some extent, they may have walled cities, but even then, we're not talking hundreds of thousands of people. You've got this great army of Syria surrounding him. Then Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes, that he may see." So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. You got good backup. The cavalry is there. And when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, "Please strike this people with blindness." So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. So you see the nice reversal that you have there? The man of faith is given eyes to see the army of God, and the army of the enemies are struck with blindness that they cannot even see themselves at that point. And Elisha said to them, to the one struck blind, "This is not the way, this is not the city. These are not the droids you're looking for. Follow me, I will bring you to the man whom you seek." And he led them to Samaria. So he's leading them astray. So they're blinded, and he's like, no, you're in the wrong place. This isn't the place. This isn't the guy. Here, come with me. I'll show you. I'll show you where you actually need to be going here. A little Jedi mind trick for him, or something like that. So the Lord, as soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, "O Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see." And so he opened the eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And as soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, "My father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down?" And he answered, "You shall not strike them down." This is not, this is maybe unexpected. I was expecting the angels to have, the army of the chariots of fire and the horses to have wiped them out. No. They lead them, you think maybe lead them back to Syria and say, "No, this is the place you're supposed to be. I'll take you back to Syria. Oh, look, you're home." So he led them to where the king of Israel was. And okay, now we'll strike them down, right? No. You shall not strike them down. When you strike down those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow, you can't, if you have captured prisoners of war, you can't just massacre them. If it's in battle, it's different, but once you've captured them, we don't treat them that way. We treat them humanely. Kind of still the same rules. Set bread and water before them that they may eat and drink and go to their master. So he prepared for them a great feast. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. And the Syrians did not come again on raids into the land of Israel. So that God definitely working counter to human wisdom. God's ways not being our ways. Our ways would have been like the king of Israel. Now's the time to strike them down, right? I think of Peter's impetuousness in the garden. It's like, now I'll strike with my sword. And Jesus is like, no. This is not what we're going to do. So God shows mercy. God shows mercy on the Syrians and doesn't just release them or send them home, but feeds them, fills them, and then sends them back to their master. What do you think that would have? What effect do you think that would have had on the Syrian army?
What a nice guy.
What a nice guy. It's like, okay, we're going to go raid the king of Israel again. Yeah, I'm hungry. We can go get another meal. That sounds good.
Maybe they would think that
You fed us last time.
poison.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I suppose that could have been the case. It would have been something they could have done. It's poison them all and killed them that way. But But apparently not. I mean, none of them died, so
He
I
treated
imagine they were a little
them-
leery
he
of
treated
it.
them with kindness. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so what does this remind you of, in as far as God's teachings go, Christ's teachings?
And the greatest of these is love.
Okay, if you want to be the greatest, you must be servant of all. Okay. Yeah.
Love thy neighbor as
Yeah.
himself.
All right, love your neighbor as yourself. Love not just love your neighbor if he's nice to you, but love your enemies. Yeah. And so he burning coals upon their head by treating them with hospitality and things. So this is an interesting precursor to all that.
Kill them with kindness.
Kill them with kindness. Yeah. Yep. That's good.
I used to tell my kids, they got bullied. Hey, nice to them. I wonder what the heck they're up to.
Yeah.
I don't think we could do that with Russia.
There's a nice little statement from Luther on. Luther says, "Where there are 20 devils, there are 100 angels. And if that were not so, we would have long since perished. We are on the battlefront whenever we teach the word, whenever we preach and glorify Christ, and then live as far as possible according to the gospel and the word of God." So it just shows it's like God must have more protection over us than Satan does, than Satan has harm against us, because otherwise we would have perished long before this. Satan would have done everything he could, but God always has more to protect us than Satan has to harm us. So, verse 23 says they didn't go on raids anymore, and then verse 24 says, afterward, Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, mustered his entire army and went up and besieged Samaria. So there's some sort of time lapse here. So when it says they did no longer go on raids in Israel, and then there was a time lapse where they did start sort of, maybe it wasn't they did organized warfare, but in this case, now the king of Syria is going against Israel once again. And there's probably a length of time that's elapsed here because now there is a great famine in that area. And great famines don't just pop up, overnight or even from one year to the next, because there's usually there is some storehouses of grain. So years have passed, and we talk about when the Israelites went down to Egypt, everything was hunky-dory, and then there was a new Pharaoh who didn't know Joseph, and then things went south there, and things were reversed. So, so to say in that time frame, they no longer raided Israel, but now in this famine time, however long has transpired between verses 23 and 24, they are ready to besiege Samaria once again because, there's a famine in this area, and so when it's life or death, and you're going to see how severe this famine is in a moment. When it's life or death, it's kind of every man for himself, and all the treaties kind of go out the window, So there was this great famine in Samaria. So they were after food as well. So it didn't just hit one local area. It wasn't just like just a city, but it was this whole region. Because, drought or insect infestation or some sort of cataclysmic event happened that caused this. Now, don't read ahead. It's gross. And it's horrible. I mean, what the story that's about to transpire shows in a very graphic way that how awful and horrible this famine really truly was, and how miraculous God's deliverance was about to be. So there's a great famine in Samaria, and they besieged it until a donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver, and the fourth part of a cob of dove's dung for 5 shekels of silver. So, yeah. The commentator I was listening to on the donkey's head thing really kind of spoke down about the donkey's head, but I don't know. I've been in, having been in Liberia and stuff like that. There's a lot of good eating on the head of an animal. I mean, well, if you're starving, perhaps.
Maybe.
Well, there's beef cheeks and there's tongue and there's, I guess the eyes are supposed to be good. I don't know. But but 80 shekels of silver is exorbitant. I mean, inflation is out of control. And like a pint of dove's dung was selling for 5 shekels of silver. There's one question as to whether that's like a reference to a recipe. Like SOS is not what it is, but it's ground beef and mushroom soup. So is dove's dung actual feces of a bird, or is it like some sort of cobbled together starvation food from mostly what would be discarded under normal conditions or something? It's tough to say. Either way, we're talking about the most dire of starvation foods to even conceive of eating. And it's being sold for extravagant money. Like, you can't afford to buy it, so that's why everybody is starving.
Sure. My notes say that donkey, according to the Pentateuchal law, was unclean. So according to this, it was the severity of the ban caused the inhabitants of Samaria not only to disregard the laws of uncleanliness, but also to place high value on the least edible part of the donkey. Is a donkey unclean?
Can you look up, is donkey kosher? Can you Google that real quick?
Okay. I can do that.
Cloven hoof. It's got to be, if it has a split hoof, it's no good. So that's why pigs have,
Yeah,
a cloven hoof.
Donkeys.
Donkeys are sports style.
Got full. He's got full foot.
It says a donkey is unique in that it is the only non-kosher animal with firstborn status. Although because it is not kosher, it is also not itself consecrated.
Okay, so it must be specifically designated somewhere as non-kosher. So, okay. So that also emphasizes the dire straits that they're in, that they're willing to not only eat something maybe undesirable, but also to eat something non-kosher. Okay, very interesting. Well, speaking of non-kosher, now as the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried out to him, saying, "Help, my lord, my king." Basically she cries out, "Hosanna. Help, save us." And it says, "If the Lord will not help you, how can I help you? Shall I from the threshing floor or from the wine press?" He's kind of annoyed with her. He's like, "Look, if God can't help you, how am I supposed to help you? I don't have anything I don't have any wheat, I don't have any wine. What do you want?
He probably didn't have a meal recently.
What's your trouble?" And she answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give your son that we may eat him today, and we'll eat my son tomorrow.' So we boiled my son and ate him. And on the next day I said to her, 'Give your son that we may eat him.' But she has hidden her son." When the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes. So we see the dire situation that they've resorted to, even cannibalism. And this has been prophesied. In those that would depart from the word of the Lord, their times would become so dire that God threatened to say, you'll suffer so much that you'll even resort to eating your sons and daughters. It was prophesied back in Numbers, and so it has come to pass. And we don't, without getting into details of it, we know that this is just a dire thing. And it seems that the sons were alive because, the second son is now being hidden, so it's obviously she doesn't want to lose him or something like that. This is kind of sort of a twisted reversal of the sort of the Solomon wisdom, where they come to the king and say, one has died and one is living, and they're interested in the life of the child, whereas in this case, it seems the woman is, I think it seems like the woman is basically asking, make her give up her son so that we can eat him. It's awful.
She already ate hers.
Yeah. Yep.
And she didn't offer herself,
I
did
thought
she?
they ate the king's son. Doesn't say so. We boiled my son and ate him the next day.
No.
Why am I?
All right, so the king asked her, what's your trouble? And she said, this woman said to me, so the woman who cried out for help
Right.
said, this other woman said to me, hey, let's eat your son. She's recounting the conversation
Oh,
between the
I
two
thought
women.
she was saying eat the king's son.
No,
and
no,
the
no.
king was like, okay, let's eat him. Okay,
no.
I missed. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's the woman talking and said,
Woman
this woman
okay.
said to me, not the king talking.
Okay.
So the king heard the words of the woman. He tore his clothes. Now he was passing by on the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth beneath his body. So he was already wearing the sackcloth and of mourning or whatever it might be. And you think he would have cried out, like, oh, that the Lord would deliver us from this, or oh, what terrible situation we've resulted in. We should repent or something. No. Verse 31, and the king says, may God do so to me and more also, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today. So he's like, he's so distraught over the cannibalism of these two women, and probably not the only two that's doing this. His resultant anger is directed toward God and Elisha to the point where he's just vowed in the Lord's name to kill the Lord's prophet by putting his own life on the line too. We've heard this vow spoken before. May the Lord do to me and deal with me and forever more severely if I don't do X, Y, or Z. By this certain time. I think Jezebel maybe even gave one of those vows at one point. So it's like, all right, so somebody's going to die. Either Elisha is going to have his head removed, or you just said, may God kill me if I don't kill Elisha. It's like putting your life on the line in a threat against the Lord's prophet, not a wise mood. I mean, he was starving, hangry, makes irrational decisions. But yeah, so Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. Now the king had dispatched a man from his presence, but before the messenger arrived, Elisha said to the elders, do you see how this murderer has sent to take off my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold the door fast against him. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him? While he was still speaking with him, the messenger came down to him and said, this trouble is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? So this is that the king has sent a threat, and Elisha knows it's coming, and they say, keep him outside. And so the messenger comes with the word that says, God is sending this. We're not going to trust in the Lord anymore. In fact, we're going to take out the Lord's man in hopes that that's going to change God's mind. I don't know what the rationale for that is exactly. But here's Elisha's promise. Elisha says, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, tomorrow, about this time, a seah of fine flour shall be sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. So Elisha just prophesied that in 24 hours, flour and barley are going to be cheap as dust. You're going to get as much as you want for pennies. Then the captain on those whose hand the king leaned said to the man of God, if the Lord himself should make windows in heaven, could this thing be? But he said, you shall see it with your own eyes, but you shall not eat of it. So one of the king's advisors was like, look, even if we're starving, even if God sent rain today, we're not going to eat tomorrow. We got things that have to grow and harvest, and he's like, what are you talking about? That's madness. That's crazy. Apparently, he had forgotten the whole manna thing. Was God about to send manna again? Maybe, I don't know. There was a prophecy there, so you got to trust in the word of the Lord. So the prophecy is 24 hours. We're going to have plenty of food. We're going to go from starvation and cannibalism and exorbitant prices to the next day, as much as you want. Now there were 4 men who were lepers at the entrance to the gate. So here's God's going to use the least to bring something of the greatest. Now there were 4 men who were lepers at the entrance to the gate, and they said to one another, why are we sitting here until we die? If we say, let's enter the city, the famine is in the city, and we'll die there. And if we sit here, we'll die also. So it's like, look, we're sitting here, we're obeying this rule that we can't go in the city. Like, we're going to die here, we're going to die there. What difference does that make? So now, let's see. And if we sit here, we'll die also. So now come, let us go over to the camp of the Syrians. If they spare our lives, we'll live. And if they kill us, then we shall die. It's like, our last chance is, let's defect over to the Syrian army, and maybe they'll have mercy on us, feed us, and they'll take us in over there, and we'll live. But if they kill us, then, well, we're dead either way. So they look at their options. Stay here, die. Go into the city, die. Go to the Syrians, maybe not die, or die. So we got a 1 in 4 chance. Let's try with the Syrians. So they arose at twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. But when they came to the edge of the camp of Syrians, behold, there was no one there. For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians hear the sound of chariots and horses, the sound of a great army, so that they said to one another, behold, the king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Egypt to come against us. So they fled away in the twilight and abandoned their tents, their horses, and their donkeys, leaving the camp as it was, and fled for their lives.
Well, that's hard to believe. Wow.
Isn't it an amazing miracle?
Without seeing anybody, they fled.
So it's at twilight, so they're hearing something, and did God make the sound of the angelic chariots and horses sound like the army of the Egyptians and the Hittites? I think maybe even better, it's did God make them think the sound of these 4 lepers' feet to sound like this great army? That in God's hands, the feet of 4 lepers is as strong as the armies of the Hittites and the Egyptians.
Yeah.
By the word of the Lord, the weak are the strongest in things. But that's what they heard, and so they fled. I mean, they thought the Israelites had gotten mercenaries and had teamed up with the Hittites, which were a northern enemy, and then the Egyptians coming up more from the south. It's like, look, they've got us trapped here. So they ran. They split. And they left everything behind. They didn't even pack up and leave. They just left. And when these lepers came to the edge of the camp, they went into a tent and ate and drank. And they carried off silver and gold and clothing and went and hid them. Then they came back and entered another tent and carried off things from it and went and hid them. It's like, hey, we got all the time in the world. I mean, none of the Israelites are going to come out here. They think that this camp is full of Syrians, and we got all the time in the world we want. So we're going to just start, So they go from being lepers and outcasts and starving to being full and now, rich. They got all the silver and clothing and stuff that they want. But then they said to one another, this is not right. We're not doing right. This is a day of good news. And the Greek translation of the Old Testament uses the word gospel there. This is a day of gospel, good news. If we're silent and wait till the morning light, punishment will overtake us. It's like, look, they're going to find out tomorrow morning when the guys on the walls look out and they see, hey, there's nobody out there. And they find out that these guys knew that and didn't say anything. It's like, hey, who do you think you are? So they're like, look, let's go tell everybody. So they came and called the gatekeepers of the city and told them, we came to the camp of the Syrians. Behold, no one was to be seen or heard there. Nothing but horses tied and donkeys tied in the tents as they were. The gatekeepers came out and was told to the king's household. The king rose in the night and said to his servants, I will tell you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we're hungry. Therefore they've gone out of the camp, hide themselves in the open country, thinking when they come out of the city, we'll take them alive and then get into the city. See, he thinks it's a trap. Like, oh, they're luring us out and they're waiting in the area around. And as soon as we come out, they're going to cut us off from the city, and then we'll be captured. And one of the servants said, well, let some men take 5 of the remaining horses. Remaining horses. Wonder what happened to the rest of the horses.
Probably.
Seeing that those who are left will fare like the whole multitude of Israel who have already perished, let us send and see. It's like, look, we got nothing to lose. Just let them go look. And if it's true, then we're going to die anyway. So let them go see. So they took 2 horsemen, and the king sent them after the army of the Syrians, saying, go and see. So they went after them as far as the Jordan, and behold, all the way was littered with garments, equipment that the Syrians had thrown away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out and plundered the camp of the Syrians. So a seah of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. Just as he had promised. Yeah.
Can we kind of look at the geography of this? It seems so puzzling that they would be in such dire straits in Israel, where Israel was, but not so far away, there was plenty.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a map on 581. The right-hand side is Elisha.
Yeah, okay, here it is. So we have, okay. So what, we're in Dothan? Is that kind of the area?
Yeah, it's just above the word Israel.
So here's Dothan. It's about 20 miles to the Jordan here. And Syria is up in this area. So, I mean, there's the Sea of Galilee. So, I mean, the Sea of Galilee is a significant, Mount Hermon. So there could be, water and rain going north, but not coming across this way as possible. That the Syrians came equipped with plenty and came down to attack the Israelites while they were in starvation mode. And part of it also was the not only the famine, but then while they were being besieged, you cut off supplies from the outside, then you're going to starve them out as well. So you're stuck with whatever's in the city as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Plus the Syrians probably captured the food supplies and took.
Yeah, whatever they did have, the Syrians were capturing and those things. So they, the whole way that, it's like, which way did the Syrians go? Well, follow they're shedding off all their garments and stuff. It's like, we got to travel light, we got to run. We got the Hittites and the Egyptians are even maybe chasing us, and we've got to make our way back. We got to get out of here. So it's just like, which way did they go? I think they went that way. Why? There's all the stuff.
Follow the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, right. So it all came to pass. They had plenty of food and flour and barley and.
It's hard to believe this happened without them seeing the enemy.
Yeah. I mean, in the middle of the night, they're running away. It's
Yeah.
like sometimes we lose track of how much we can or can't see at night.
Well, God put the fear in them.
Right, first off, that God put the fear in them, and I've gone out at night, like under a full moon. You can see a lot. You can see a whole lot. One of my favorite vacation hikes that I've ever done was we hiked to Delicate Arch in Arches National Park in Moab, the one that's on the license plate. We'd done hiking during the day, and we got back to our campsite, and this beautiful full moon rose up over the mountains, and we're like, wow, it's a full moon. Wow, it's like really bright.
Yeah.
And so there was actually another couple about our age that was like a couple campsites over or something. We got to talking, and we're like, I think we're going to go back and hike. And so we hiked Delicate Arch under a full moon and didn't need headlamps because there's no light pollution, and we had this full moon, and the shadows were incredible. It almost looked like those old Western day for night shots that they would do. You ever seen those where they're filming like old black and white Westerns? They would film them during the day and put these dark filters over the lenses to make it look like it was nighttime, but there was shadows and everything like that. I mean, so it'd have to have either been, because it was daytime, but they were making it look like it was nighttime. But honestly, that's what it looked like under the full moon. It was that bright that our shadows were that extreme. We didn't even need to use flashlights. We had them, but we didn't need to use them. So we did this hike in the middle of the night. It was really cool. It was the middle of summer, so it was not cold. Yeah, that was not a cold time. The desert can get quite cold at night because there's no moisture to hold the heat in the air. Yeah, but it was pretty extraordinary. The stars were just incredible. And then there's other times then when it's cloudy or there is no moon or something. When dark is dark. So for them to think what we're hearing, what we can't see, maybe that doesn't surprise them. Like we can't see it, but we can hear it. We know it's out there somewhere. Yeah. Rationality was not what won the day that day. But Elisha made another promise about this deliverance. Verse 17. Now the king had appointed the captain on whose hand he leaned to have charge at the gate. Remember that guy that said, hey, even if God opened the windows of heaven today, we wouldn't eat tomorrow? Well, the king put him in charge of the gate of the city. Now you've got a city full of starving people on one side of the gate, and all the food they could possibly want on the other side of the gate. How's this going to go? Gene just said it. That guy's about to die, isn't he? Yep. And the people trampled him in the gate so that he died, as the man of God had said when the king came down to him. When the man of God said, this is what's going to happen about this time, and he answered, how could this be? And Elisha had said, you shall see it with your eyes, but you shall not eat of it. And so it happened to him. The people trampled him in the gate, and he died. Yeah. Trust in the Lord. It's like, well, I don't know how it's going to happen, but God said it would, so I'm in. I think that's a good way to reply, not to mock God in those times. Yeah. Any questions about that siege or that restoration? All right, chapter 8, yes, chapter 8. Now Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, arise, depart with your household, sojourn wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine and it will come upon the land for 7 years. And the woman rose and did according to the word of the man of God. She went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. So she's in the north, she's in Samaria and in Shunem, and then she's going to go down into the land of the Philistines, which is in the southwest of Israel, the Gaza Strip area. So where kind of the Mediterranean begins to curve there, that's kind of that area. So she's on the other end of things. And at the end of 7 years, when the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, she went to appeal to the king for her house and her land. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, "Tell me all the great things that Elisha has done." And while he was telling the king how Elisha had this is the same guy again. So there's, it's like, you want to know about Elisha? Talk to Gehazi, because he was the one that saw all these things firsthand. So while he was telling the king about how Elisha restored the dead to life, behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life appeared. It's like, oh, hey, we were just talking about you. And Gehazi said, "My lord, O king, here's the woman. Here's her son, whom Elisha restored to life." And when the king asked the woman, she told him, and the king appointed an official for her, saying, "Restore all that was hers, together with all the produce of the fields from the day that she left the land until now." So God's still watching out for her. She was gone for 7 years, and she comes back, and it's like squatters had come in and taken the land and started farming it and whatever like that. And the king says, "No, give it back, give her the land. And also, anything that's been raised or bought or sold, raised on her land, she gets all the profit."
For the past 7 years.
For the last 7 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah. She's restored. She's made whole completely. Pretty miraculous there. I think 7 years is interesting because that's the Jubilee year length that God had established. After 7 years, things are restored to people and debts are canceled and things like that. So that's an interesting parallel there.
Are we hopping around? Wasn't Gehazi killed?
He didn't die. He was struck with leprosy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was struck with leprosy. There might be some question as whether this is whether it's chronological. It's the same guy, but whether it's chronological or not. I mean, it could be like, oh, just so you know, at one time when there was a famine going on, the woman left and came back, and Gehazi was still around, or it doesn't even say that Gehazi's a leper at this point. So maybe it's this, chronologically, is this out of order? Possibly.
Yeah, seems that way.
Yep. We get so hung up on chronology.
Has to make sense.
Yeah. All right, we're going to have some political intrigue now, as we're going to have some change in leadership. So Elisha came to Damascus. Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick. And when it was told him, "The man of God has come here," the king said to Hazael, "Take a present with you and go to meet the man of God and inquire of the Lord through him, saying, 'Shall I recover from this sickness?'" So Hazael went to meet him and took a present with him, all kinds of goods of Damascus, 40 camel loads, just for the news. I wonder if he's sort of asking, it's like, look at all these goodies. Does that mean I'm going to live? Man of God who healed Naaman and who did all these miraculous things. Look at all these great things. Am I going to recover? What do you think? You need another 40 camel loads? What's it going to take?
Driving him.
Yep. So he came and stood before him, and he said, "Your son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to you, saying, 'Shall I recover from this sickness?'" That's like a term of respect, like your servant, or you're just being humble before the man of God. Just again playing up the desire to get good from him. And Elisha said to him, "Go and say to him, 'You shall certainly recover, but the Lord has shown me that he shall certainly die.'" So it's like he's not gonna die of the illness, but he is gonna die. We're gonna find out how he's gonna die. And he fixed his gaze and stared at him until he was embarrassed. And the man of God wept. And Hazael said, "Why does my Lord weep?" He answered, because I know the evil that you will do to the people of Israel. He's telling this to Hazael. So here's Elijah just staring at him, like looking right through him. And he's like, to the point where he's embarrassed, he's like, why are you looking at me? And Elisha starts to weep. He's like, why are you looking at me weird? And why are you crying? He says, because I know how evil you are about to be, Hazael. You will set fire to their fortresses, and you will kill their young men with the sword, and dash in pieces their little ones, and rip open their pregnant women. And Hazael said, what is your servant who is but a dog that he should do this great thing? He's like, what do you mean? Who am I to do this? But Elisha answered, the Lord has shown me that you are to be king over Syria. Then he departed from Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, what did Elisha say to you? And he answered, he told me that you would certainly recover. But the next day he took the bedcloth, dipped it in water, and spread it over his face until he died. And Hazael became king in his place. So Hazael assassinates the king by drowning him in his bed, by suffocating him with a bed sheet. And we have this prophecy that Hazael is going to be an evil king of Syria. He's going to torment the people of Israel. So we're going to see how this all goes. So in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, when Jehoshaphat was king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. So we've got Joram and Jehoram. Unfortunately, these actually could both be written either way. So they both have the same name. So we've got King Edward and King Edward.
Oh.
King Edward of the north and King Edward of the south, basically, is what you got. And so we've got Joram and Jehoram. Same name, but they're different guys. When he was 32 years old when he became king in Judah, so we're talking about southern kingdom, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem, and he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done. The daughter of Ahab was his wife. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord was not willing to destroy Judah for the sake of David his servant, since he promised to give a lamp to him and to his sons forever. So you have Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, who becomes king in Judah. So we're talking southern kingdom, reigning in Jerusalem. Some good kings, some evil kings. But Jehoram's wife is the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. So you know she's no good. Yeah, so you've got the southern king marrying the daughter of the evil northern king and the evilest woman in the Old Testament, Jezebel. So she's going to bring with her all the evil and things like that. And then you've got Joram in the north, who's also a descendant of Ahab, also being evil. So we've got this descendancy of Ahab continuing to contaminate the tribes, the northern and the southern kingdoms. So when it says that he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, that's never a good thing. Because that's walking in the way of Rehoboam in the north and just all those evil things. But even though he had done all this evil in the sight of the Lord, why was God not willing to destroy Judah?
David.
Because of David, but for the sake of David, because what about David?
The covenant.
God had made a promise to David. Not because David was so fantastic, but I think that's an important marker here, is that God keeps his promise. Even to David, who did evil and good. And so even Jehoram could have done evil and good, just not been an idolater, and God would have blessed him. But even for the sake of God keeping his promise, he would not destroy Judah. He will carry them off into exile soon. The northern kingdom's really soon about to go, but the southern kingdom will go later, but then return. But he's not willing to destroy all of Judah because he had promised to give a lamp to him and to his sons forever. You know, that remnant king heritage was going to remain in Judah. God had kept that promise, and so he was going to sustain that promise. And that lamp idea is that messianic promise. It's that language from the book of Revelation, that the lampstands are placed before the Lord, and ultimately in the New Jerusalem, they have no need of sun or moon, for the Lamb in the midst of the throne is their lamp. So it's the promise of Messiah is what this is making reference to. So God's mercy and his steadfastness to his own promises endures even in the midst of all the evil that is done by his people and all around it. His remnant will remain. We saw that with Elijah. Hey, I'm the only one left. And God said, no, I've saved some. And even here, when all this evil is going on in Judah, God says, I'm not going to destroy you because I'm going to keep my promises to you. In his days, in Jehoram, Edom revolted from the rule of Judah and set up a king of their own. All right, so Edom, the Edomites, are the descendants of Esau. So they are relatives to the Israelites. They are under the control of the southern kingdom, and they rebel and set up their own king. All right. Then Joram passed over to Zaire with all his chariots and rose by night, and he and his chariot commanders struck the Edomites who had surrounded him, but his army fled home. So we've got, it says Joram, but this is how I said the name could be spelled both the same ways. Jehoram. It's the southern kingdom guy. Don't want to be confused there. It's confusing, but sorry.
Yeah.
So he defeated the Edomites, but they didn't press forward. They retreated, and they won the victory, but then they split. So Edom revolted from the rule of Judah to this very day. And Libnah revolted at the same time. That's another area. And so Judah is losing control of some of the peripheral territories that they're also controlling. Now the rest of the acts of Joram, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? So Joram slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his place. So that's the southern kingdom event. So he kicked out the Edomites. The Edomites are rebelling, and so are the Libnans. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, the king of Israel, now we're in the north, and Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah. She was the granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. This is all this bad intermarrying because Omri was a bad dude as well, and all this connection to the house of Ahab. He also walked in the way of the house of Ahab and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the house of Ahab has done, for he was son-in-law to the house of Ahab. He went with Joram, the son of Ahab, to make war against Hazael, king of Syria, the guy who had murdered the guy in the bed. So you've got southern kingdom, northern kingdom now going together against the kingslayer in the north. And the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that the Syrians had given him at Ramah when he had fought against Hazael, king of Syria. And Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. And Elisha the prophet called one of the sons of the prophets and said, so I know it's a little bit confusing to keep everybody straight. So north and south went against Syria, the far north. The king of the north got wounded, was taken to Jezreel to heal. The king of the south went there to be with him because he was sick, and they're sort of buddies right now. So it's kind of like the New Testament where everybody's named Mary. All right, so we got more going on here. We're going to have another change in power here. Elisha the prophet called one of the sons of the prophets and said to him, tie up your garments, literally gird up your loins. Get ready to run and to do work. Take this flask of oil in your hand and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when you arrive, look there for Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi. Now Jehu was one that Elijah had been told to anoint king. And he said, whoever escapes from Elisha shall, the sword will put to death, eventually Jehu will put to death. So sort of this long-standing promise from the time of Elijah that Jehu was going to be king and was going to avenge the Lord. So now Elisha is telling this son of prophets, go anoint Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi. Go in, have him rise from among his fellows, lead him to an inner chamber, then take the flask of oil and pour it on his head and say, thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel. Then open the door and flee. Do not leave. So I mean, that's a good, Go in, anoint this guy to be king when there's already another king who's wounded and healing and evil. You're going to come in and say, you're the king now. Bye-bye. Because whatever's about to happen, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But boom, here it is. So the young man, the servant of the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead, and when he came in, the commanders of the army were in council. You got the joint chiefs sitting there. This guy walks in. He says, I have a word for you, O commander. Jehu says, well, which one of us? We're all commanders. Doctor. And he said, to you, O commander. So Jehu arose and went into the house, and the young man poured the oil on his head. It's like, it wasn't even a conversation. One of the guys said it was like a drive-by anointing. He's like coming in, he's closing the door, and next thing you know, it's like, what are you pouring oil all over me. What's going on? Poured oil on his head, saying to him, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anoint you king over the people of the Lord over Israel. And here's the whole story that Elisha told him to tell him. And you shall strike down the house of Ahab your master, so that I may avenge on Jezebel the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab every male, bond or free, in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in the territory of Jezreel, and none shall bury her. Then he opened the door and fled. I mean, he made a very strong prophecy there. It's like, I will cut off from Ahab every male, and in Hebrew the phrase there is everybody who pisseth against the wall. And so everybody who pees standing up is going to be cut off.
I never read that before.
The King James used to translate it that way. Yeah, but it's all the males, and the house. This is God's long-standing promise that Ahab was going to be fully cut off, and that's what was about to happen. And even Jezebel, this great evil witch of an idolatress, is going to be killed. And there's not going to be even anything to bury. So we're going to have to see how that's going to play out here. So Jehu is finally anointed to be king, and then the prophet's buddy, the servant, he takes off. When Jehu came out to the servants of his master, they said to him, "Is all well? Why did this mad fellow, why did this madman come to you?" He's like, what is this? What is this? You know, what's going on? Why are you covered in oil? And he says to him, "Oh, you know the guy. You know the fellow in his talk. He's just a madman. He's just babbling on." And they said, "That's not true. Tell us now." You imagine this is the guys who get together for driveway beers, and one of them gets walked away, and another one comes back, and is like, "You okay, man?" He's like, "Oh, everything's fine. We're fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. How are you?" And they're like, "Baloney. What do you got? What's going on?" "Well, thus and so he spoke to me, saying, 'Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king of Israel.'" There's the whole deal. Then in haste, every man of them took his garment and put it under him on the bare steps, and they blew the trumpet and proclaimed, "Jehu is king." I mean, there was a big risk right there. Now Jehu comes in and says, "Well, he just anointed me king, and these are all the commanders of the king." The son of Ahab, and he could have said, they all could have said, "Oh, king, you say? We're not committing treason. The king is the king, not you." And they could have taken him right there. But instead, we have this military coup, if you will, where one of the generals says to the other generals, "I'm the king now." And they all said, "Sounds good. We got all the swords. What are they going to do about it?
Sounds good.
We like you, so yeah, you're in." All right. So now we have two kings again. There's sort of this parallel. Was there another time when a secret king was anointed in place of the actual king that God had deposed? Sandy's nodding her head. David. Remember? David was anointed king, and it took 15 years before he actually became king.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Saul had been deposed by God. God had said, "I'm done with you, but you're still going to be king for a while until I get David into place." Samuel just came and anointed David privately, but he was the king, and so then it built up from there. Well, it's kind of the same thing with Jehu. Jehu doesn't have any qualms about what he's going to do to the king, the current king, though. I mean, David was sort of remember how he was like, "I'm never going to touch the king, I'm not going to kill him," or things. Jehu doesn't have any problem with that. So, thus Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram, North Joram, with all Israel. Now Joram and all Israel had been on guard at Ramoth Gilead against Hazael, king of Syria. But King Joram had returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds. You knew that. So Jehu said, "If this is your decision," to the generals, "then let no one slip out of the city to go tell the news in Jezreel." Then Jehu mounted his chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there. And Uzziah, king of Judah, had come down to visit Joram. So it's look, all right, generals, if you're in, then make sure everybody stays here and that this stays secret. I'm going to go take care of this. So he takes off for Jezreel, to where the two kings are, to go and become king. Go take care of this. Now the watchman was standing on the tower in Jezreel, and he saw the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company, people are coming. And Joram said, "Take a horseman and send to meet them, and say, 'Is it peace?'" So it's look, we got this band of people coming. Go meet them and find out, is this a war or is this peace? So sent a man on horseback, went to meet him, and says, "Thus says the king, is it peace?" And Jehu said, "What do you have to do with peace? Turn around and ride behind me." It's sort of you're on my side now. Don't worry about whether it's peace or not. Follow me. I'm the man of strength, kind of thing. It's don't worry about whether it's peace or not. Just follow me, and you'll have peace. And the watchman reported, again, saying, the messenger reached them, but he's not coming back. Then he sent out a second horseman who came to them and said, the king has said, is it peace? He says, what do you have about peace? Turn around and ride behind me. The watchman again reported, he reached them, but he's not coming back. I love this. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, where he drives furiously. So apparently, Jehu had a reputation for how he drove his chariot. And the word for he drives furiously is the same word up earlier. It was like when they said, what did that madman say to you? Why did he come and visit you? The madman part is furiously. So he drives like a madman. He's an aggressive driver. So he goes fast.
Yes, Carson.
He's got a souped up horse and chariot. So they could tell from a distance away, well, that guy really drives like Jehu. Well, because it is. Joram said, make ready, and they made ready his chariot. And they don't know, like, this is what's going on yet. It's like, oh, one of my generals is coming. All right. So Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, set out in their own chariots and went to meet Jehu, and he met them on the property of Naboth the Jezreelite. Do you guys remember the story of Naboth the Jezreelite? Naboth's vineyard. Ahab wanted Naboth's vineyard. And he was all sullen and sad about it. And Jezebel said to him, aren't you the king? Just take it. I'll take care of it for you. And Jezebel set up this feast where Naboth came and was set next to these two plants setups. And they accused Naboth of cursing the king and blaspheming God. And they took him out and stoned him. And then Naboth's vineyard became the king's. You guys remember the story? All right. Well, God had promised that Naboth will be avenged for this. And this is when they said, Ahab's lineage is going to be utterly cut off. Well, ironically, in God's divine irony, where does Jehu meet the son of Ahab to do this? At the property of Naboth the Jezreelite. And notice it's still his.
Yeah.
It's not the king's vineyard. It's still Naboth the Jezreelite's. And that was always how God had placed these things. It was like, because Naboth had even said, no, I can't give you the vineyard. It's my heritage. God gave it to me and my family. It's not mine to give away. And even when the king took possession of it, in God's eyes, it was always still Naboth's because God had given it to him. And that's why, like, after those, in the years of Jubilee and the Great Jubilee and stuff, everything had to go back because it wasn't theirs to take or give away. It was always there. It was from God. So that God even still called it the vineyard of Naboth, the Jezreelite. So here we are. It's like it's all coming to fruition now. God is patient in how he lays these things out sometimes. So the kings arrive and they ask, is it peace, Jehu? And he could have said no, but instead he delivers this great insult. He answered, what peace can there be so long as the whorings and the sorceries of your mother Jezebel are so many? What'd you say about my mama? You talk bad about somebody's mom, there's going to be a fight, right? And he just called her a whore and a witch. And Joram reigned about and fled, saying to Ahaziah, treachery, O Ahaziah. He's like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. It's not peace. It's not peace. It's nothing but peace. No, not even near peace. So he turns around to split, and Jehu drew his bow with his full strength and shot Joram between the shoulders, so that the arrow pierced his heart, and he sank in his chariot. So he turned around to go, and Jehu just full power. He didn't hold anything back. Wham! Got him right between the shoulder blades, right through the heart from the back. And Jehu said to Bidkar, his aide, "Take him up and throw him on the plot of ground belonging to Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember when you and I rode side by side behind Ahab his father, how the Lord made this pronouncement against him? As surely as I saw yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, declares the Lord, I will repay you on this plot of ground. Now therefore take him up and throw him on the plot of ground in accordance with the word of the Lord." So this is a little piece of information we didn't have previously. Jehu was at the vineyard with Ahab when Elijah pronounced the curse against him. And Bidkar, this other guy, were there too. They were with the king that day when it happened. They heard it. And not only was Naboth killed, but also his sons were killed, apparently. We didn't get that earlier either, but you got to kill the descendants if you're going to take all the land. Otherwise, dad dies, it goes to the kids. Well, they cut them all off. And God promised this, and so Jehu is like, not only are we going to kill him, but drag him back and put him on that ground to show that his blood is now spilled on this ground like Naboth's and his sons were, to restore this back to Naboth's family. Or I don't even know if there's anybody left with Naboth's family, but vengeance is mine, declares the Lord. And in full measure. So when Ahaziah saw this, the king of Judah, he fled in the direction of Beth Hagan, and Jehu pursued him and said, "Shoot him also." They shot him in the chariot at the ascent of Gur, which is by Ebeline, and he fled to Megiddo and died there. His servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in the tomb of his fathers in the city of David. And in the 11th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, Ahaziah began to reign over Judah. That's more of like, by saying when it had all started, it's sort of their way of bookending it at the end. So that's the end. The ending statement is actually the beginning. It's a little strange. But now Ahaziah and Joram are both dead. So there's the king of the north and the king of the south have both been assassinated by Jehu. We have one more person to take care of today. Jezebel. When Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her eyes and adorned her head and looked out the window. So the painting of the eyes thing, what had Jehu just called her? A whore and a prostitute and all these sorts of things? Well, painting her eyes, that's what prostitutes would do. That's what whores would do. And so for the author to sort of say that this is how she engaged herself was to say, yeah, she even looked like one. So this is not a forbidding of wearing makeup. This is a forbidding of making yourself out to look like a prostitute. So whatever culture you're in and wherever you're at, whatever makes you, don't dress like you might be mistaken for a prostitute or an idolatress. Well, or cross-dressing, yeah, that's right. Don't let your outward, don't make your outward dress to be about your sexuality. Adorn yourself with modesty, because your body is the Lord's. And really the prostitution aspect of things, the worship of Baal and Asherah that Jezebel was so engaged in was the cult prostitution. That how would you worship Baal and Asherah? Is you would go there and you would pay and fornicate with their priests and priestesses at these places. So the worship of Asherah and Baal was definitively prostitution. So that she was in charge of all this stuff put her at the top of it. So as Jehu entered the gate, she said, "Is it peace?" You Zimri, murderer of your master. Zimri, that's a kind of a sly reference. Zimri reigned for like 8 days or something. He was a short timer, and so that's kind of what Jezebel is saying to him. It's like, you Zimri, you murdered your master, but you're not going to be king for very long. You're a short timer. He lifted up his face to the window and said, "Who's on my side? Who?" So apparently she's upstairs. She's looking out the window, and she shouts down to him. And he looks up and he says, "Anybody up there on my side?" And 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. A couple of guys look out and say, "I guess we are." And Jehu says, "Throw her down." So they threw her down. And it must not have been more than, it had to have been more than a couple stories. Because when she hit, some of her blood splattered on the wall and on the horses, and they trampled on her. I mean, there's actually a word for being thrown out of a window. Anybody know what it is? Defenestration.
Sure.
It's actually a thing. Defenestration. Just like it's spelled. Just like it's a DEFENESTRATION. Defenestration. Yeah. Out the windowation. Christine?
So in verse 33, so they threw her, Jezebel?
Yep.
Okay, so Jezebel didn't get eaten by the dogs in verse
Oh, hold on.
Oh, okay.
We're not done yet. I mean, she's dead, but the horses trampled her.
I was really confused there.
Hang on. She's not. We're not done yet.
Okay, so,
There's more to come. Gotta rewrite this.
no, I'm not. I'm just like, don't be, no.
Verse 34. Then he went in and ate and drank. I mean, man, this is just the hardness of these military men. It's like you just throw her out the window. There's blood everywhere. The horses just trampled her, and this is like Game of Thrones kind of, it's like he comes in and he's like, "What do we got? You got a napkin first, so we can get the blood off me here." And it's like, "What did she have laid out for dinner? Let's eat that meal." Meanwhile, she's outside. They went in and ate and drank, and he said, "See now to this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter." It's like, all right, fine, go ahead and bury her. But when they went to bury her, they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands.
Wow.
When they came back and told him, he said, "This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite. In the territory of Jezreel, the dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel. And the corpse of Jezebel shall be as dung on the face of the field in the territory of Jezreel, so that no one may say, 'This is Jezebel.'" So, however long that meal took, if you've ever seen, like third world kind of country areas and things like poor areas and stuff, just packs of wild dogs. They're just around. There's a lot of them, and so for the fact that she hit and the horses trampled her and there's this blood and meat everywhere and things like that, the dogs are going to be right on that. And so it would not have taken very long for them to tear into that. And after the dogs eat, what do the dogs do? They defecate, and so the corpse of Jezebel shall be as dung on the face of the earth, because the dogs are going to go crap her out. I mean, how? It's like you really are disgraced when they even talk. When they don't just talk about you getting eaten, but they also talk about how you get processed. Oh, man.
Why would the dogs eat everything?
Yeah, what's that?
Why would the dogs
Vengeance
eat
is
everything?
mine, saith the Lord.
Yeah, why not the hands and the feet and the head? I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. So in Eastern Orthodox iconography, there's this, and I think this kind of descends from sort of Jewish thinking. Your identity is sort of bound up in your face, in your hands, and in your feet. It's like take off your shoes, you're on holy ground, that kind of thing. The hands are part of your identity, and your faces. And so when there's an icon that's been painted or written, and it begins to fade or deteriorate, they'll sometimes make a metal engraving or depiction of that same icon and place it over the picture that's deteriorated underneath, but they will cut out openings at the face and the hands and the feet. So that, this is their also understanding of the person in that image has some capacity to communicate through that picture, and so they leave those aspects open so that it's not hidden, it's not a covered thing. So the hands and the feet and the face have to do with their identity, and so basically, her hands and feet and face are left to show nobody stole her body. This is Jezebel's identity here, and the instruments by which she inflicted these things, wherever she had gone with her feet, that had all been desecrated, are now undone. So there's that. We had a very violent day. This is, today's Bible study brought to you by Quentin Tarantino. Everybody dies.
But when it says skull, when I think of skull, I think of just the bone, not like the flesh, right? I mean, yeah.
You get a big pack of dogs going to town, I don't think it's going to take very long.
Yeah, okay. Because I thought you meant like they didn't touch her face, but I'm like, no, it says just skull.
Right.
Which is just the bone,
Yeah.
Maybe the,
Well, you know, the
have too
good
many
parts are the
bones. I don't-
cheese and the
I mean,
tongue.
feet have a lot of bones.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it all goes together. Christine, you get the last word.
Oh, okay. So driving up to Dad's house this past weekend, he has a driveway that's about 3 football fields long, and it goes up the side of a big lake. And as we came around the corner, alas, was a baby deer just annihilated all over the place. Well, when I say annihilated, it was just fur everywhere. So I have that on video. My brother went up and got his machete and picked it up, and the coyotes got to it, and there was nothing left other than the skeleton.
Yeah.
And it was just so right there in our face. And it was, I don't know how to describe my emotions. It was just so weird. And this is what this reminds me.
Yeah.
And it's a human
Nature
being
is
versus a deer.
nature is a harsh thing. First you get the ones that attack you get the fresh meat off it, and then you get the ones the birds, the scavengers that come and get what's left after that, and then vultures and things like. Everybody gets bit, and then the insects and everybody get to benefit from it too. Yep, sure enough. And so God had fulfilled all his judgments against the house of Ahab and Jezebel from the time of the Mount Carmel thing, because that's when God said, "Go and anoint this priest, and go and anoint this." Jehu is the king, and I'm going to fulfill all these things against Ahab and Jezebel. And now here, it's a long way after that, but thus says the Lord, and so it is. And so he fulfilled those things.
Not ours.
Right. All right, so we'll leave it off at chapter 10, because Jehu has more work to do. Because Ahab had 70 sons, and all the sons have got to go. We'll pick that up.
Wow.
We'll pick that up next time.
Gotta go.
Gotta write letters.
Okay, Jim.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Go watch something cheerful.
Is James considered one of the good kings, or I know